Hello everyone, I'm Lucy, I'm currently a trial in Method. I've been playing WoW for around 6 years.
What you see here is a video I made for the Method YouTube channel while I was playing for Method in 2017. This was made during the farm leading up to Method claiming the world first Kil'jaeden Mythic. In that video I was talking about add-ons, but in this video I'm going to cover what makes someone a candidate to be a Race to World First guild raider. And I'm gonna walk you through my journey of raiding in WoW from the beginning up until joining the, at the time, best guild in the world. Right at the beginning, I want to add the disclaimer that this is all based on my own experience, both as someone who's gone through the journey it is to join a Race to World First guild, and as someone who's played with many people and still is playing with many people who have been in Race to World First guilds. I've split this segment into 4 core points, being player ability, mentality, stability, and social ability. When you're looking for someone to raid in a Race to World First guild, you're not always looking for the person that's going to be doing the most damage on the pull you kill the boss. You're looking for someone that plays really well really early on a boss. You want to kill the bosses as soon as possible, not look the best doing it. You're looking for someone who's able to plan and execute plays that will help you solve the problem you might be having progressing a boss early. The best example I can think of here is in the Undermine on Mythic Moxie. One big hurdle on this fight was executing the cages correctly. In a dream scenario, you'd want to have these cages cleaved down because you were also on a timer to push the boss before going through too many phases. But with how the cages worked, you weren't inherently able to do so. However, the Liquid Mages figured out that if you were at one point inside the cage and tagged the ad, your ignite would be able to spread to those mobs from the boss if positioned correctly. This resulted in a situation where you played numerous mages. They would utilize their shimmers and displacements to make their ignites cleave from the boss onto the ads, provided the cages were positioned correctly. This quickly resulted in pretty much every single one of the other top guilds replicating the strategy, because it solved the problem of needing to cleave down the ads while still having enough damage to kill the boss before you ran out of time. The ability to think in a problem-solving mode like this is what creates these plays. This player ability is largely what distinguishes a player that will excel in a Race to World First guild to someone that might only be very good at doing numbers or mechanics. There's an important distinction between two types of players. On one hand, you have the player who focuses on looking good, always chasing the highest damage numbers, even if it situationally means compromising on mechanics or overall raid performance. On the other hand, you have the player who's willing to sacrifice their personal output, even their own spotlight moment, for the greater good of the guild. Ask yourself this: if going AFK for 30 seconds during a fight means that the raid has 1 fewer wipes on this boss, would I do it? Even if to outsiders it made it look like I had no idea what I was doing. That lack of ego, the willingness to put the raid before yourself, is often misunderstood by people outside the Race to World First scene. It's the difference between someone who looks like a top performer on logs and someone who actually plays for the success of the guild. Now, it's worth pointing out that these two things aren't always mutually exclusive. In fact, it's usually easier to take a mechanically strong player who already puts out big numbers and then teach them to play for the raid's success. And in top guilds, you'll find that most players do have great personal numbers, even very early in progression. The difference is, you very rarely see these players prioritize padding or personal DPS over executing mechanics during progress. At this level, that's what defines true high-level performance. It's vital to have players who are stable, not just in terms of gameplay quality, but also in how they interact socially with the team. Playing for long hours every day over extended periods of time can be incredibly taxing and exhausting. Having the emotional resilience to navigate that pressure is a huge strength. Because the Race to World First is such a public event, outside voices, spectators, fans, and sometimes even critics inevitably have an impact on some of the players. Sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it isn't. The key is not letting that noise affect you. You really see this when 2 or more guilds are neck and neck on a boss. If one guild then kills the boss first, it can be demoralizing for the others. And that demotivation often shows up in the form of sloppy mistakes, unnecessary wipes, and a general dip in performance. The players that can block out that pressure and stay focused are the ones that make the biggest difference in the long run. Social ability might seem like a small detail, but in reality, this can be one of the biggest factors in whether someone is thriving or surviving in a Race to World First guild. Most of us have at some point had the experience of working with someone we didn't get along with. Now imagine that instead of just going home at the end of the day and venting about it, you're spending 16 to 18 hours a day with that person for weeks on end. And all this in an environment full of problem solving, frustration, and mental fatigue. You don't have to be best friends with everyone in the raid, but fitting in socially with the group's vibe and even helping improve the atmosphere can have a massive impact. It can make the difference between a raid environment that feels supportive and one that slowly wears people down. Not everyone has to be the social spark smart plug all the time, but finding a healthy balance, knowing when to contribute positively and when to just blend in smoothly is an important part of a long-term success at this level. First of all, I want to talk you through my own journey, from the very first real guild I joined all the way up to the moment where I became part of what was at the time the best guild in the world. My raiding journey began back in Mist of Pandaria, when I joined my first proper 25-man heroic raiding guild called Warcry in 2014. I had been in other guilds before, but Warcry was the first one where I experienced what it was like to actually clear the content. When I joined, they just finished Siege of Orgrimmar with a world rank of around 185. Later that same year, I moved on to Enraged Revolution, who had finished at world rank 74. In Warlords of Draenor, I joined Halcyon in late 2015 and we finished Blackrock Foundry with a world rank of 77. Unfortunately, Halcyon disbanded less than halfway through the Hellfire Citadel, which left me with no guild. A few days later, I was contacted by the Guildmaster of Danish Terrace. I was fortunate enough to finish Hellfire Citadel with them, where we placed at world rank 19. In Legion, Danish Terrace pushed even harder in Emerald Nightmare, where we finished at rank 5. We even climbed as high as rank 3 in Trial of Valor after a few guild bans took up some of the competition. My last tier with Danish Terrace was Nighthold, which we wrapped up at rank 9, but unfortunately Danish Terrace disbanded after Nighthold in early 2017. With Danish Terrace gone, I found myself looking for the next step, and that's when I joined Method, which was a big step up. So how did I end up joining Method? When Danish Terrace disbanded, I felt like I was still very motivated to play the game. And I was at a point in my life where I could take the time off needed for full-time raiding. And with that in mind, I simply went onto the Method website and I filled out an application. The recruitment process took somewhere between 1 and 2 weeks, and it consisted of a meeting with Scribe where we went over my logs. He had some questions for me and then he got back to me a few days later with an invitation to the guild. But that's not always how it goes. There's mainly 2 ways to join a Race to World First guild. The first one is the one that I went with. I contacted them with my information and they decided I was worth giving a shot. The second is what I've definitely felt more in my time playing in top 10 guilds since then. And that's players being approached by the leadership in these guilds. This is a brilliant way for Race to World First guilds to recruit people. They can look at guilds in the top 10, contact their top players, and through that process find viable candidates for their guilds. Alright, so I've covered what brings someone to the point of being a candidate for a Race to World First guild, and how they can either get recruited by applying or being contacted. Now is the most important part, and probably the hardest part, how to succeed in a Race to World First guild. On a stream in March of 2025, Max comments on the claim made on Reddit that there's not much difference between player skill in top guilds. The difference is that Race to World First guilds have analysts and stuff, where he talks about how often Liquid has recruited players from top 10 guilds that ended up not working out. Looking at the current Liquid roster, it consists very heavily of players that have previously played in top 10 guilds, such as Fatshak Yes or Instant Dollars. So I wanted to figure out what exactly made these players succeed in the Race to World First compared to the players that didn't succeed. For this, I had to ask around a little bit. But it wasn't surprising what I was told. It's not often someone pulls their best performance in their first year of raiding in a Race to World First guild, but experience and an ability to adapt and learn is something that's worth a lot in these guilds. Having previous high-end experience at this level transitions into being more calm and clear under pressure. In an interview made with Echo by Secret Lab, they say, "The key is to manage this stress and leverage it as a motivator to maintain focus. The importance of a calm voice communication cannot be overstated. All it takes is one person sounding panicked to spread stress throughout the team." There's no doubt that going through progress for this amount of hours, multiple weeks in a row can be stressful, and being able to manage that, be constructive and grow in that environment is an ability that sets someone up to succeed in a Race to World First. That's going to wrap it up for this video. If you enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe to me here on YouTube. It's going to help me out a lot. You can also catch me live on Twitch or follow along on my Instagram for updates. And I'd love to hear from you, so drop a comment below and let me know what kind of content you'd like to see. And if you've watched for this long, thank you very much and have a great rest of your day.